Like many Texas communities in the mid and late 19th century, Bryan began as a small town stop along the state's expanding railway system. But almost from the beginning, Bryan was different. It quickly distinguished itself from the many other railway stops across the state by flourishing into a vibrant and permanent center of business and trade.
It was just a busting retail, mercantile community. Everything happened. There was no malls, there was no strip centers. What we had was downtown Bryan.
There were drugstores, it seemed like, on every corner downtown. It was really great because you could go like the drugstores you see on movies now, the tile floor, the little chairs, the stools along the bar. Go sit and watch a malt being made or a sundae or whatever you wanted.
It was just one big happy place, and everywhere you went, they knew you. It didn't matter if you were 5 years old, 15, 55, or 95. We all knew each other, and it was fun.
Everybody pretty well knew everyone, or if you didn't, you knew about them. And it was just a pretty close-knit community.
You knew a lot of the people who came in from the outlying communities for groceries and supplies on the weekend. And that was why Saturday mornings were great, because you got to see friends that maybe lived in Edge or out on the river somewhere on one of the plantations out there. And everybody, as you said, visited. You knew practically everybody in town, or at least you knew about everybody in town.
A good part of my growing up was spending time in these buildings downtown and walking around with my friends and family and going in the movie for 25 cents and those kind of things. It was the best childhood that could possibly be in Bryan.
I grew up in downtown. It was the center of civilization in Bryan College Station at that time. A&M was very, very small, military school, and so we came down every weekend. Every weekend went to the Palace Theater and went across to Jarrett's Pharmacy and drank cherry phosphates, and Dad would bank down at First National Bank, and so there wasn't much else when I was a kid other than downtown.
I remember when my mother worked at JCPenney, downtown Bryan, so we do all our Christmas shopping downtown. I use it as an example, like now the younger generation has the mall. This was our mall, which was downtown Bryan.
But things began to change as cities expanded and people and businesses began to move out of downtown.
Before any of us knew it, there was plywood over windows, and the streets looked bad. There was nothing really alive. Very few businesses that weathered the whole way through.
What started to happen is growth began to go south and east. Typical suburban sprawl began to spread out away from the urban center, and as a result, the banks, department stores, shops began to leave downtown and follow what we call follow the housetops. So they began to leave in the 60s, 70s, 80s. They went to the new shopping centers. They left and went to the new business corridors south of here. And they also went to the new malls, the Manor East Mall in the 60s and Post Oak Mall in the late 70s. And so it was a big migration away from the city center here that had been there for 100 years.
The first little shopping center that opened up was the one that's right out there at Townshire. Some of the major merchants in downtown Bryan started moving out to Townshire. And that's from what started the exodus of downtown merchants. And it just started from there on, and Bryan started going downhill. And it was a slow death.
It was a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of horrible streets that were torn up. I say torn up, but just potholes and no trees, not a lot of beautiful things to really look at. A lot of your older buildings were covered up with slip covers and that kind of thing, and in bad shape.
The streets decayed, the buildings got worn down. Even the Palace Theater roof fell in 1986.
The owners of the theater didn't have the money to clean up the mess, and so they gave the property to the City of Bryan. Well, the problem was there that the City of Bryan didn't have the money to clean up the mess either. So for a couple of years, our downtown featured a fallen down major building, which was across the street from an empty LaSalle Hotel that bums were staying in and birds, pigeons were roosting in, windows boarded up, windows broken.
As I went into high school, you know, I hardly ever came to downtown. I think the only reason we came through downtown was to drop something off at, you know, Twin City Mission or something like that. So there was really not a destination of anything to go. Most of those businesses had moved further south on Texas Avenue by that time.
It was just really a ghost town.
Bryan wasn't alone, as many Texas downtowns were deserted at that time. However, a glimmer of hope remained for downtown Bryan, and that was shared by a small group of residents.
Everybody knew that downtown Bryan had some really kind of cool buildings, but nobody could figure out what could we do to get things going.
Some citizens got together and formed a group called Downtown Now, and the city council was, at that time, was forward-thinking enough to allow Downtown Now some funds for a hired employee, and we arranged to clean up the mess of the Palace Theater. We spent every single weekend, pretty much every single weekend, shoveling debris, chipping concrete off of bricks, breaking up concrete slabs, hauling off wreckage. And this took about a year and a half to get to the point where it wasn't dangerous to walk near the building.
Some downtown property owners thought of just cutting their losses by simply bulldozing down their buildings. Thankfully, that didn't happen, thanks to a group of dedicated citizens.
It's the root of the heritage, what brought this community together, what developed it, why the settlers stopped here, what helped it develop and grow.
I could call it the heart of a city, the beating heart of a city. I think a lot of people would argue that point, but I will tell you this, that a city without a robust, walkable district, retail district, that is also a residential district, that is also a commercial, a business district, an office district. I think that city is lacking, and I think you see that.
During the 25 years I've been here, downtown has sort of been kind of a metaphor for, what I like about Bryan.
What we all need is a strong sense of identity, and we need some focal point where that happens. And I think that during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we all became suburban folks and moved out. We had no sense of identity, and so I think that a downtown gives that kind of identity where you belong, getting to know each other, and you ride around the houses in neighborhoods and nobody's outside anymore, they're all inside. So again, this gives a focal point for people to get out of their houses and get where they can interact with people, and so I think that's really important.
It was then that leaders of the City of Bryan decided to take action, and they started with a building that's windows had been boarded up for years.
The first order of business at that time was to really look at the biggest eyesore in downtown Bryan at the time, a diamond in the rough. It was definitely the rough that time, and that's the LaSalle Hotel. If anything was going to happen in downtown Bryan, you just couldn't have boarded up plywood windows on a 7-story building in the middle of downtown and revitalized. So that was the first, I'll call it the first major catalyst project.
After the LaSalle was fixed up and the historic Carnegie Library was restored in 1999, the city decided to do more.
The city council and the mayors and a lot of leaders in Bryan decided we are going to bring back one of the biggest assets we have, and we're going to revitalize downtown. And they said, let's allocate some funds to develop a master plan in 2001.
It was really the synthesis of a lot of new ideas, both on the kind of the aesthetic side, as well as the technical engineering side. What do we need to do to go, to replace the infrastructure below ground? Water and sewer lines and storm sewer and all those types of nuts and bolts. So it kind of put it all together.
The city hired the consulting firm of Looney Riggs Kiss Incorporated from Nashville, Tennessee. They suggested to do things right and start over with new infrastructure.
One of the major recommendations of the plan, and I credit the consultants for really providing some experience from other downtowns, and that was to put your resources into a core area of downtown. And they recommended that we make a splash. We totally tear out and start over on a 4-block area as a phase 1.
But even prior to the major construction projects, some brave business people were already relocating to downtown.
I would say it was pretty risky to think about trying to build it back because it had a long way to go, and it wasn't the most popular place in town. In fact, really and truly, it had a sort of the thought in people's minds that, you know, it's kind of dangerous down here.
Kay Conley opened the doors to her furniture and decorative business in 1996.
I think what our store did here is it brought, it actually brought people downtown that hadn't been downtown in years and years and years. And then it became a place where, by word of mouth, people from out of town started coming.
Zane Anderson purchased his first building in 1997. He now owns 12 properties in downtown that have residential and commercial uses.
I found downtown interesting because it's so unique. There's no way to recreate this anywhere else in Bryan College Station.
By the time phase 1 of the master plan was completed in 2005, downtown Bryan had a little momentum.
Well, I think when they renovated Main Street, it was more or less interpreted by the entire population that the downtown area was moving finally ahead.
All of a sudden, it was rolling, and it's been rolling ever since. I'm very thankful.
The people that I talked to before I opened up were like, "You're crazy for going downtown because there's nothing here." I said, "No, it's going to make a comeback." I said, "Downtown is going to make a comeback, and it's going to be real soon, and I want to be part of it." So, you know, I didn't listen to them, and I'm thankful that I didn't because we've been really successful downtown.
That infrastructure reinvestment brought new life to downtown and new hope for not only our current merchants and the survivors, but new ones that wanted to come in and develop these buildings for restaurants, shops, high-tech office space, and so on.
And if anybody says the government infusing money into something to jumpstart it is not a good investment, they haven't done their homework, and they haven't seen the proof.
That proof is in the life that is evident in downtown today. And it's not just what the city has done to the area, but the community partnerships that were formed.
And the idea was it doesn't need to be completely city-driven about everything that goes on in downtown. The idea at that point was, let's not have a city department that does downtown Bryan revitalization. We want to work with a group that represents or that works with the business community.
The Texas Red Steak and Grape Festival, a holiday lighting ceremony, parades, and many more events now fill the downtown streets throughout the year.
The events that began to happen, both the city-sponsored Texas Red Steak and Grape Festival, which we just had our 3rd year this last year.
One of the more regular events is First Friday, a downtown celebration that occurs on the first Friday of every month. The event was started by Greta Watkins, who owns and operates the Frame Gallery.
I decided to go ahead and start it after I moved to this location in 2005. I thought this is the time to try First Friday, see if that could take off.
I mean, people started going, wait a minute, I didn't know this was down here.
The city continued the master plan with Phase 2 in 2006. That effort remodeled 4 blocks of Bryan Avenue. And during each step of the way, the city has completely redone water and sewer connections, drainage, they've buried electrical lines and installed fiber optic cable, which has allowed for high-tech businesses in downtown.
We've done 2 phases so far, complete of downtown, both on Main and Bryan. We're working on the next phase in downtown north on Main Street, and that'll kind of extend the north and south boundary of Main Street for the downtown infrastructure improvements. So I think that's going to be a really neat sight to see, to stand at one end and be able to look all the way down, to see the ice house at the other end and have that new infrastructure all the way down the roadway.
That project should wrap up in 2011, but expect downtown Bryan to continue to grow. Old buildings are renovated each year thanks to the city's award-winning Downtown Improvement Program, and more businesses keep popping up in the area.
What I think we have in downtown today, in 2010, is a dream come true. We are on the track of this dream of a revitalized, functioning downtown.
You come down there downtown now, whereas I described before, you know, in the 80s it was desolate. You come down on a Friday night now and you have trouble finding a parking space. You know, it's a great problem to have. You have people using the infrastructure we built, walking the streets, going to businesses, and having a family atmosphere. So it's been a great turnaround.
There's a lot of people looking for retail space in downtown, and there's really very little available right now. The north end will be exciting because that'll add a lot of space, a lot of mixed-use space, and a lot more residents downtown, hopefully.
Downtown's a great place to do business, you know. It's going to get better, always, and it has been. So, you know, we've got the evidence to prove it.
Any given day, I could just skip down the sidewalk. I mean, and shout, just shout. I mean, it is so exciting to see this many people downtown.
People used to say downtown Bryan is dying, and I said, no, it is dead. But it now has risen from the dead. And it's alive and well, and I think it's going to continue to be that way.